everyone, my name is Kirsty Thorsty and welcome to my channel. Alright everyone, so it's that time of the month again where I'm going to tell you all of the wonderful books that I've read this month. So it is February wrap-up time. So the first book I want to talk about that I read in February is my book of the month, my favorite read of February, and that is Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. Oh my gosh, this book was so just delightful and fun and airy and laugh out loud hilariousness. So basically Finding Audrey is about this girl named Audrey who is suffering with some anxiety issues, and it's just about like the repercussions that has on her family, how that's kind of shaken up her own life, but it's told in such like a fun, lighthearted way. She basically finds this guy named Linus who help. Are you a fangirl for Linus, Guppy? Right when I said Linus, Guppy was like, yeah, so this book was just really fun, full of like lighthearted, silly moments. I love the family dynamics. The mother was just like everything to me. She was so high-strung, she was off the wall, and I loved it. And then Frank, her brother, also was a character. He's like obsessed with this online video game, and he's just trying to spend all this time doing it and going against his mother's wishes, and it's just a really cool, like, funny dynamic that whole family has. And this whole book just flies right by. I think I read it in the span of like 2 days. Just so good. So good. Definitely worth the read of the month. This isn't even the highest book that I rated because I did have some issues with this. I didn't really like Linus. I thought that Linus was not super supportive. I thought that some of the things he did like pushed her too hard in like negative ways, and he wouldn't let her do what she thought was necessary to her healing process. I just thought in general that Linus wasn't all there for me. Actually didn't even think he was a very like fully fleshed out character either. I mean, what do we know about Linus? I think we know that he like speaks German, he plays water polo, he plays that online game her brother plays, but like we don't know a lot about Linus at all. He's a very flat character, and I thought that was the main hiccup I had with this, so I docked a star for Linus, but otherwise this book was so good and definitely rereadable, which is a gold star in my book. I do have to say I sent a couple of these books back to the library because, you know, I ran out of time. So I'm gonna have to show you on my iPad. Hopefully that's not too distracting. The next book I want to talk about for February is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab, which I actually gave 5 stars, so this technically should be my read of the month, but I kind of gave this 5 stars just because of how much I'm enjoying the Shades of Magic series in general. I do think that A Gathering of Shadows could have been a little tighter, could have been a little faster. The pace for me was just a little bit slow. Okay, whenever I hold up my iPad, it makes my whole screen turn yellow. Okay, that seems better. I turned up the brightness and it seems better. Anyway, so I feel like this book could have been a little tighter. It could have been a little quicker paced. I feel like there were parts that were a little bit slow, but overall, you know, I'm a huge Lila Bard fan. I'm like her biggest fan ever. I'm just a huge fan of the series in general. I love the way that it's moving. I can't wait to read A Conjuring of Light, which I just bought a couple weeks ago. I pre-ordered it. So exciting. And yeah, I just really in general love this. I don't have a lot of negative notes for it. I just love this series, and it's quickly becoming my favorite series of all time, so I can't wait to see how it's wrapped up in the next book. I actually read both of Nicola Yoon's books this month, and the first one that I read and the one that I liked a little bit more was Everything Everything. So the things I loved about Everything Everything was just how quick it was, how fast-paced, how intriguing it was. I loved the relationship, which is, I feel like I'm kind of hard to please when it comes to relationships because I want them both to like be fulfilled, and I need it to be like a healthy relationship, and I feel like I just have a lot of like, I have like a big checklist of things that need to like be done for relationships, and I just think that this was handled so well. I really enjoyed Ollie's character. I think that he was really interesting. His whole like weird parkour thing that he was always doing was super silly, and I just really liked their relationship a lot, and I think that in general this book was really interesting. I flew through it in a day. I actually did a full review on it because I was just bursting with opinions, so I did a full review. I will link it down below if you want to hear all of the things, but yeah, basically I rated this a 4.5 stars, and I thought that it was really good, really solid. It was just the ending, the twist at the end, just, it didn't do it for me, and I had to knock off some points, but in general, thoroughly enjoyed. Much love for this book. So the next book I want to talk about is 9 Stories by J.D. Salinger. I've been trying to read a classic every month just to kind of broaden my horizons and not read all of the YA and all of like the silly contemporary stuff, because I have a tendency to do that. Wait, it was right. Oh, what's going on? I'm messed up. All right. Anyway, so this was a really solid short story collection. I'm a huge fan of J.D. Salinger. Obviously, I've read Franny and Zoe. I've read Catcher in the Rye, both a couple of times. So I had been kind of stalling to get to this because he hasn't written a lot. So once you kind of get to the end of the couple things he wrote, there's nothing else, and that's just really sad. So I was putting this off forever, but finally I was like, I want to read this. I want to get through it. It was really good. I rated it 4 stars. Pretty solid collection. I would say that if you are going to just read one of these stories, I would definitely read A Perfect Day for Banana Fish. That shit blew my mind, guys. Blew my mind. There's the, I won't even say anything, but if you are a fan of short stories and things that just like grab you and things that are just quick and interesting, I would definitely try to read that. And I think you'll probably find it online because it's pretty popular, but it's just really good. It blew my mind. It's impressive, and if you aren't gonna read the whole, short story collection that J.D. Salinger has put out, I would read A Perfect Day for Banana Fish for sure. Alright, and then I have another Nicola Yoon book. Well, look at that. I also read The Sun Is Also a Star this month. Alright, so I have a lot of complicated feelings about The Sun Is Also a Star, so I want to just talk about the highlights for a second. So, the 3 things I loved about this book was the really interesting POV, where we jump into the head of these tiny, tiny peripheral characters that actually have this ripple effect that affect our main characters in their lives as they know it. Love that. I also love the family dynamics of both Daniel and Natasha. It is very thoroughly fleshed out, both sides of the family. I feel like I have a very thorough history of both of them. That was really good and really impressive. And the third thing that I really liked was just the diversity of it. I love that they went into talking about like all this Korean history. They talked a lot about Jamaican history. I felt like I actually learned a lot in this book, which was cool. And I really love the aspect of fate and destiny and all these things coming together for these 2 characters to meet and just be together. And that was really interesting. However, I feel like since we're only with these 2 characters for a day, there's only so much I can empathize with them, because I don't see them go through this long arc of all these things happening to them and these journeys and things going on. I just see them for a day. So it's almost like you're peeking in on strangers, whereas, I'll take her other book as an example, as in Everything, you feel like you know Ollie and Madeline. So it's a very different feeling with this book, but I do in general think this is a piece of art, and I love the foiling of Daniel and Natasha. I won't get into it in case you haven't read it. I'll let you discover that yourself, but they are perfect like foils for each other, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and this book was very good. So the next book up this month is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I rated this a 3 stars. I really enjoyed like the town and the world kind of building, not really world building because it's just contemporary, but just like the town itself was just fully populated with characters. We peeked in on a lot of characters and I never got confused. I was really, really impressed by the way that Gillian Flynn had all these dynamic people and characters and archetypes and levels and layers of things going on in this town. I literally feel like I had been to this town. It was really, really cool. I really enjoyed reading about that and all of that aspect of it. However, this is a mystery story. This is a thriller, and there was no thrills and there was no mystery. So that was just really lacking for me. How it all ended up, I had anticipated from like 50 to 100 pages before that. It really was predictable and unimpressive in the way of like intrigue. However, the characters were so cool, and I feel like her characters break molds and they're interesting and they're not cardboard cutouts. They're fully fleshed out, even if they have the tiniest part, which it's hard for me. I wanted to rate it at 2 stars, but I couldn't because of how awesome the writing and everything was, so I went with 3 stars. I would recommend this if you just are interested in just reading some good writing. She's a great writer, so if you just want to hear someone spout off this like beautiful literature, floral language, and read about a town and a family and some characters, this is great, but I wouldn't go into it expecting these twists and turns and mysteries because that's not what this accomplished for me, so I read a super hyped book this month that I did not like, and I've been kind of talking about my dislike of it like all of February. So I'm like, how have I still not had my wrap up? Because I feel like I've talked about this book like 10 times. But anyway, so that book is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I did not enjoy this book at all. I thought that it was very slow moving, boring. I had a really hard time pushing through this. But it wasn't because the writing was bad, and it wasn't because the characters were bad, and it wasn't because the world was uninteresting. Literally, things were happening, but I wasn't interested in the things that were happening. So I think it's just because this book just wasn't for me. It didn't hit on the types of things I like to read about, and for that, I was uninterested by it. However, people who are really into high fantasy and fairies and things like that, maybe you'll enjoy it a little bit more. There are characters' backstories and some world building elements that were just info dumped onto us from like pages of dialogue. And to me, that's just a little bit of laziness in the writing. I wasn't a fan of that. And people were telling me, oh, just hang on, the last 10% of it, the last big chunk, super interesting, just hang on. And I hung on and I wasn't interested. So I just think this wasn't for me. I did pick up A Court of Mist and Fury from the library, thinking maybe it was going to, progress in a positive way I'm going to enjoy, because I'm a huge Hades and Persephone fan, and I heard that that was going to be a retelling of that. So yeah, I'm into it to hear more about Rhysand and Feyre and Lucian, because those are the ones that I was super interested in. So yeah, otherwise I rated this 2 stars. I wasn't a huge fan of it. But if you love this book, good for you. I think she's gonna make 100 of them. So yeah, right on. So my last book I want to talk about this month, which was actually the first thing I read this month, is Damned by Chuck Palahniuk, and I rated this 2 stars, more like a 1.5 stars. Really wasn't digging this at all. It was basically about this young girl who, she's 13 years old, and she thinks she overdosed on marijuana and she gets sent to hell. And it just was very odd. The story was just very odd. The characters were just very flat, very uninteresting, really didn't have a lot of backstory, didn't have a lot of personality. The main character, who we learn a lot about, was the one that I was the most interested in. Her name's Maddie, and her life on Earth was a little bit interesting for me. The thing that I found the most intriguing, the thing that actually kept me reading, was the personification of hell, the world of hell, and what you needed to do to end up in hell. It was so funny. There was a lot of things that were really super specific. There was a lot of things that were super specific that were just caught you off guard, and you were just oh my god, that's so weird but really funny. I just think that this really wasn't something for me. I wasn't super excited by it. I didn't really like any of the characters. I feel like I'm being really harsh, but it just wasn't my thing. So alright, well that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching my February wrap-up. If you can't get enough of me, you can follow me on all the social medias. I will link them down below. Otherwise, I will see you next Monday, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye!